the Red Duster doing some wrenching and adventuring and reminding that you need to buy some of my merch or mail me an index card before June 27th for a chance to win my 2023 Dodge Challenger. All right, let's go! It's time to do some work on the Red Duster. This is my 1971 Plymouth Duster that you may have seen in an earlier episode on my channel, the one where I was driving all around LA's San Fernando Valley showing you old street race spots and stuff like that. You may have also seen the car in episodes of the Roadkill Garage TV show, which is where Steve Dulcich and I put this thing together. Let me give you the quick history of it. I'll sort of get into the nuts and bolts of it as I'm working on the car. This thing was a complete, literal dumpster. My buddy Mike Coffey, who's a Mopar flipper, found the thing, and it was full of trash behind some derelict apartment building, and he bought it, and it was clapped. It was a slant 6 car with a 3 on the tree, and Dulcich and I went over to his driveway, got the thing running, blew up the slant 6, let that thing hit the bottom of the dumpster, and then swapped in a 5.9 Magnum, and a 4-speed and an 8 3/4. It's got 323 gears in it. It's sort of the beater version of every cool Duster that my friends had in the 80s and 90s and that I've had sort of since the 90s until now. And I love the thing, but it does need a little bit more work. And that's what I'm gonna do in this episode. Let's go wrench on this thing and then take it on a little mini adventure. Right over here's another Duster. That appears to be a 7340 car in Sublime or Limelight Green. It's weird, that old gas station looks like it's been there since the 50s. Sometime in the 80s I went there and they were parting out a GTS 68 Dart, and I bought the green bucket seats out of it for I think my 69 Dart convertible that I was working on. And then I sold the car, didn't need the seats, they were in my way. I took them to the Pomona swap meet, they didn't sell, and I just left them behind. Can you imagine doing that today? I don't think so. This whole area out here, Sun Valley, California, was like the gearhead center of the San Fernando world because all the junkyards were here. The Sun Valley Pick Your Part had its own sort of subculture of car guys who would go out there and pick stuff. Remember, me and my friends got a 340 out of there one time and a shark tooth grill for a 71 Duster. Muscle cars were just in there all the time. When I was the editor of CarCraft, we used to get big blocks out of there to build up for magazine stories. I remember I got Buick, Olds, and Pontiac 455s out of there and over the period of a week or two. Yeah, good times. I feel just right driving the Red Duster with its stick and a V8 cruising Sun Valley. But that's old man reminiscing. Let's get home and start wrenching. And now's when I start making my beater better on a budget. As I go, I'm going to describe to you how Steve Dulcich and I initially built this car out of a dumpster and into a muscle car. But I want to go through it and just fiddle with some things that's going to level it up a little bit as a driver. And to begin with, I've got the no fun process of trying to fix the door handles. Here's my problem. The door does not open from the outside. There's no amount of locking or unlocking or pressing that's going to make it function. I can get it from the inside, but listen to this. When you shut the door, this glass rattles like mad. So it's just an annoying thing that keeps it from being a great driver. You got to reach inside. You can never roll the window all the way up or you can't get in because I got the same problem on the other side. I'm not going to go into excruciating detail about how to fix this because it's boring and unique to any different car, but I am going to fiddle with it and solve that because it ruins the whole car for me. This took way too much fiddling. Here was the problem with getting the door open. I removed the handle, and you'll see when you press the button, it activates that little lever, which then moves this rod, which goes to the mechanism that is actually the latch, and which opens it up, or in theory it does. The problem was tolerance stack up, meaning there was so much wear in a bunch of little tiny places that this was not pressing the lever in the door far enough to unlatch it. I mean, the screw was loose. This little tab right here I needed to bend to take up some wear. And there was some wear on the end of the rod. There's some wear in this. There's some wear in that. And also on the latch. I solved that by taking this hose clamp, wrapping it around this sort of paddle here that the lever or the pusher rod hits. And it took up that tolerance. And so now it works. It's kind of Mickey Mouse, kind of Butch, but you'll never see it. And it works. That's what I mean by don't get it right, just get the door opening. Now I got to put it all back together and do the other side. Oh, and figure out what the loud clanking noise is when you shut this door. Lots of fiddly work. That took way too long and it was a lot of cobbling, but I can open my door from the outside. Now here's something I have not had on this vehicle since I got it. A driver's side door panel. It's in rough shape. A lot of clips missing, but I'm gonna hang it in there anyway because it'll just look a little bit better. You know, having a tan interior is one of the things I really like about this car. Red with a tan or brown gut is actually pretty cool. Let me install it, clean it up. Next up, rear tires rub. There's two reasons for that. One, the shock absorbers are linguini. Second, I really need to roll the lips in here. So I'm gonna jack it up and do both of those things. New shocks, roll the lips. Jack stand. I removed the rear shock. You know, the problem here is that when this thing hits a bump, it goes right to crashing the axle into who knows what under there. The bump stops or the exhaust or something. It bottoms out really, really hard. These shocks are brand new from a parts store somewhere. They say nitrogen on them. I have no idea what brand they are. They're not stamped, but look at this. They just whoop. They are completely way too soft. And I don't mean just for performance use. I mean for anything. I've found these days it is just not worth blowing money on, you know, $19 shock absorbers. They just don't work out for me hardly ever. So, while even though I say that I'm building a better beater on a budget, to me, it's worth spending some of that budget on a good shock. This is a QA1. The way I save money on this is by getting a single adjustable instead of a double adjustable. Single means it changes the damping at the same rate for either compression or rebound. Double adjustable, you can adjust them separately. This, I find, I'm just going to be able to find the right click on the knob that gives me sort of the damping that I want, and it should keep the thing from bottoming out quite as much as it does now. It's still pretty low, but this is going to be better. This is what I call great parts on bad cars. Here's a problem you will often run into with the QA1 shock, which is that the polyurethane bushing that they give you is much narrower than your standard cruising model rubber OE type shock bushing. You know that shocks typically take these cup-shaped washers that go on the outside of the bushing and they preload them just a little bit. Well, this is so much narrower, and the stud in there is designed for the length of this, that if you tighten the nut on these studs, this shock will just rattle back and forth like this. So it needs more spacing behind it. And of course, you'll need a washer that has a hole the diameter of the stud. And you can capture it just like that and stack some washers to make sure that this thing is not rattling around in the bracket like that. Just like that. Super easy. The new shocks are on. Now I have to deal with tire fitment. I have got this thing really in a maximum stuff on the largest tire you can get on the back of a Duster. here's the specs on that. The rear axle was actually from a B body and it's been narrowed. From wheel mounting surface to wheel mounting surface, it is 57.5 inches. This wheel is a wheel Vintique's what they call a Mopar wheel, just like early stuff for a hubcap, and it is a 15x8 with 4¼ inch back spacing, and I have a Cooper Cobra 275/60/15 on it. So that is truly the max tire you're going to be able to fit on one of these things. Maybe there's an obscure slick that might be just a hair bigger here and there. But because of that, it rubs. Now, I've autocrossed this thing and it was absolutely terrible. It had a lot of body roll, and you can see that it squeaks the tires on the inside here. There's a witness mark. I'm not too worried about that. That's just an occasional squeak. But you can see right here on the tire, there is a grind mark where the outer lip has been cutting into the sidewall. The other side is even worse. And so what I'm gonna do is start to roll this lip right here. Now, I know what everybody says. They're like, oh, just do the old baseball bat trick. Put the wheel on, stick a baseball bat in there, drive the car forward, and theoretically, the bat rolls perfectly and just folds that up. You know what? I'm not saying that doesn't work because so many people claim it, but I will say it has never worked for me. Whether it's a pole or a baseball bat or whatever, all it does is deflect the sidewall of the tire and doesn't put any pressure into the metal. And if you pump the tire up to like 80 pounds or something, it still doesn't work. I've tried it half a dozen times. So you tell me, if you've had that work flawlessly, give me your methodology. I don't know. What I'm gonna do is start folding it with a pair of channel locks and then give it the old tap, tap, taparoo. Okay, I'm rolling that lip sort of as a matter of course, even though in truth it really didn't need it. Because it's not hitting the lip, there's a place inside the quarter panel right here where it's hitting. Fortunately, it's a double wall there. Basically, if this is the outer quarter panel, the inner one comes in like this and has a bump on it that the tire is rubbing on. And it's really hard to get rid of that. What I should do is heat it up with a torch and just fold it in. But I don't have a torch, so I'll probably bash on it just a little bit and it'll do absolutely nothing. That's what we're here for. I wish this was better. Different hammer. Yeah, and it's right on the fold. Well, I can probably caress it in. Pretty good, and not denting the outside. Tired. All right, it's bashed in. I think it's pretty good. I folded up about that kind of length of it, and I'm no metal worker, but one of the things I learned from Steve Dulcich is don't try and just ramrod it. You want to just move the metal. Start in small taps, and then move down and then move up and just slowly move that whole section in. And I did it, and it's not that hideous. No effect on the outside. I did roll the lip just a little bit in case it ever makes contact there. And now I have to go do the other side, which I think is significantly worse as far as tire contact than this side. So this was good practice. All right, I'm done under the back here. We got shocks, we got bashing, we got tire clearance, we got wheels and tires. And I was going to point out to you not only the fresh, shiny 8 3/4 that does have 323s and a worn-out Sure grip, but also a brand new gas tank. The old one was all full of mungy gas, so I just replaced it, or Steve and I did. And it has a new drive shaft. And the exhaust system is the most affordable kit I could find at Summit Racing. And I installed it with some Cherry Bomb Flowmaster knockoffs. And it is 2.5 inch with no crossover. So that's the specs. Let me put this thing down and I'll show you what I'm going to do to spiff up the front end of the car. Probably the worst thing about the Red Duster is that we left the entire front suspension completely stock, how it was from its derelict state, from the factory with a slant 6, all of that stuff. What that means is that it has itty bitty 9-inch front drum brakes. And it also has what Mopar guys call the small bolt pattern. It is 5 on 4. And the rear end of this car is 5 on 4.5. The bigger cars in the Chrysler lineups had 5-on-4.5, and actually so did the later A-bodies. But this one's 5-on-4. And what that means is that it's difficult to get aftermarket wheels for them that are cool, and that's why it's got stock wheels on it, which are a 14x6, maybe they're a 14x5, and that means it has a 14-inch tire too. What size is this baby? It is a 225/70/14. None of this is going to change. The reason for that is when you put disc brakes on the front and convert them to large bolt pattern, it moves the track width wider and the front wheel and tire fitment gets terrible. Another option is to put Wilwood disc brakes on it, but those are really tiny and they're okay for this car because it's so light, but I'm actually okay with the drums at this point. So that's what's going on. What am I doing here? I'm going to take the wheels off and paint them black to match the rears. The rears are all nice and fresh and powder coated or painted from Stockton Wheel, or not Stockton Wheel, where'd I get them from? Wheel Vintiques. So I'm going to make this match. And by the way, all of these lug studs say R on them, which means right-hand thread or regular. I just deafened myself. I'm so bad at this. Maybe I can turn this way and just trade deaf ears. And cue the comments of somebody saying, never use an impact with a chrome socket. If you ever really had one shatter in a million pieces, I've cracked them. Never had one blow up. Not that it's a bad idea. Look at that baby. Maximum diameter, 9090. Dinky. Don't care, let's spray paint the wheel. You're gonna hear a lot of opinions on how to mask tires off to paint wheels. Here's the worst one ever. When I was a teenager, I read in Tips and Tricks in Hot Rod or Carcraft or Popular Hot Rodding magazine that you wanna wipe Vaseline all over the tire and then just spray and then wipe the Vaseline right off. That does not work. That made the biggest silver gooey mess on my tires ever. Now, what people are going to tell you nowadays is to get a pack of cards and slip all the playing cards between the tire and the rim. I'm not a guy who has a pack of playing cards just sitting around and don't feel like making a run to the, well, local playing card store to make that happen. So here's what I do. Simply mask it as you normally would. Ta-da, right? And then grab your razor blade and whoosh. Like so. And masked. Obviously I have to take care of the rest of the tire. We'll probably throw some rags over it or something, but that's what I'm gonna do. Now let's talk engine. This is an awesome, cheap engine swap. We took the slant six out of it, and this is a 5.9 Magnum. So the Chrysler LA series engine started in the muscle car era, like 1965 for the 273, and it went all the way up into the very early 90s, and that was what was called an LA engine, and it's the engine that was like a 340 Duster would have had, or a 318, or later on the 360. And then in the early 90s, I think 92, maybe model year 93, they changed to the Magnum engine, and it was only used in trucks and vans. And it was a little bit different. The Magnum engine oils through the push rods. It doesn't have shaft rockers, it has pedestal rockers, takes a different front cover, different front drive assembly, different oil pan, but it makes a really good swap. This particular engine was pulled directly out of the junkyard, and it was installed in a car that was on Roadkill that was called the Rally Duster. It was a blue former Circle Track car, and Chris Birdsong had prepped that thing for us for an episode. And I don't remember all the machinations we went through with that car, except for in the end, we did an episode of Roadkill that was a shootout between our vet cart and then Birdsong in the Rally Duster. And our deal was, he could keep the car if he won. Well, he lost, so I told him that I needed to keep the engine, but we gave him the Rally Duster, and he fixed that thing up, got it running, did a couple autocrosses with it, and pedaled that thing. But the 5.9 Magnum lives, so it's now been in a minimum of 2 Dusters, and it still hasn't been rebuilt. It still hasn't really been modified. Stock cam, stock bottom end, stock heads. The only thing it's got going for it here is TTI headers. Those are the headers that I recommend for a small block Mopar and an A-body. They fit better than anything that I have personally tried. And it also has an Edelbrock RPM air gap intake manifold. And I don't even remember what carburetor we've got on this, but I will take off our 14x3 open element Edelbrock air cleaner and see that it's got a brawler. That doesn't surprise me a whole lot. I'm sure that that is a 750 and it is a double pumper. And thing runs rich, but it actually drives really good. So the motor's a really good dirt cheap swap. I think it makes about 300 horsepower, would be my guess, if we put it on an engine dyno, and it's fun. I'm just gonna clean it up. I'm gonna pressure wash the thing just because it's gotten filthy over use over the past, I don't know, couple years that it's been in here. That's it, engine's pretty clean. Doesn't need to be great, it's good enough. I'm gonna call it for the evening. Tomorrow, a few more little knickknacks, and of course, the Comet Wash. Happy morning! Before it gets too hot, I am going to Comet Wash this piece of refuse. You've seen the Comet Wash like a dozen times on the Comet Wash channel at this point, so let's just go to the montage and the time lapse to see how much better it's gonna look. I've got the paint and the rust as cleaned up as it's going to get. Now, this car has never had gauges. Normally I would say no news is good news, and it's had a lot of miles on it without me knowing any news about temperature or oil pressure or volts, but for some reason I feel obligated to do it. Normally I wouldn't buy these gauges. However, when Advance Auto was going out of business, I went and stocked up on a bunch of stuff, and I got these for $9. And so I thought that was okay. I don't prefer white gauges, but they're all right. So I'm gonna throw these things in there, and then I will have information to fret about. Let's talk. I've got the capillary tube in for the temperature sender, but now the oil hose. You know, almost every gauge you get comes with this plastic line. And the problem with it is that it can melt, and when it gets old, it gets brittle and it can crack. So the right thing to do is a copper tube, but I've had problems with those as well. They're easier to kink, but also right by the fitting, if they shake, they work harden and crack. So really the right thing to do is an AM line, especially if you've got a race car, but that's not happening. So I'm gonna use the plastic tube. I think I'm gonna feed it from the inside first. Aren't these things a nuisance? Man, I hate them. It's morning. I abandoned filming last night right in the middle of that gauge installation because I was super annoyed. I hooked up the voltmeter and it worked fine for a second, and then failed. $9 for the rack of gauges, and the voltmeter was garbage. I'm not sure I've ever seen one tank like that. Anyway, you'll notice that I am now wearing my Thermoquad shirt. Yes, they are back for just a little bit in my store. And if you get one, it does get you 300 entries towards winning my 2023 Dodge Challenger, or towards a chance at winning that car. You just got to get to the store and either buy stuff or mail me an index card before June 27th, 2025, and you'll be entered for a chance to win that car. Now, you probably want to drive a nice, fancy, late model car instead of garbage like this, because I happen to notice this morning that this fuel filter is completely packed with goo. Absolute trash, and I'll tell you why. The black stuff that's in that filter is goop from the inside of the rubber fuel lines, because rubber fuel lines these days can't handle the ethanol that's in the gasoline that we sell here in California. And so they get all goopy, the hoses get all squishy, and it's garbage. I'm not going to change them right now, even though I probably should. But the thing is, when you're trying to build a budget beater like this, you still have to step in and buy the really expensive hose that is resistant to that stuff. Earl's Vapor Guard is one of them. There's a couple more that you can get at parts stores, but usually the guy at the counter has no idea what you're talking about, but watch for that. I'm going to change this filter. Okay. And that's it for the tinkering. Let's hit the road for adventure. Well, I think the Duster looks better. Painting the front wheels, surprisingly, removed a lot of junkiness from this car for me. And the Comet Wash brought out a little bit of color, removed some stains. I think it's pretty good. Obviously, there's nothing you're gonna do to really save the paint on this. I know a bunch of you want to see me patina polish or clear coat, wipe on clear coat this. I should probably try it someday. I probably should. I have a kit of Vice Grip Derek's satin stuff back home. Maybe I'll give it a shot for a future video. But for now, I'm cruising. And so far, the cruising's pretty good. The rear shock adjustment, I think I need to make it a little bit more stiff. It's still bottoming a little, but when it has bottomed on me, it has not rubbed the tires. So that's pretty good. I've been driving about 15 minutes and it's about 95 degrees outside and the coolant temperature is still under 170. So I'm stoked with that. I have no volts because my stupid gauge broke immediately. And oil pressure is 50 pounds. Life is good. One of the things I do not like about the Magnum engine swap is that the block, the front cover, does not have an accommodation for a mechanical fuel pump. And for reliability, I do prefer a mechanical fuel pump. So I've got a little Carter unit back there buzzing away, and I do have a spare click-clack with me just in case. I cruised up the Grapevine in California, which is notorious for overheating old cars, and it got to 210 degrees. And once again, it's mid-90s out. Right now we're cruising at about 185 on the downslope, so everything's good. Let's talk Duster history. I am guessing that it was probably mid to late 1968, maybe early 69 at the very latest, when they started designing the Plymouth Duster. And the way that went is that the Chrysler design team was hyper-focused on creating the E-body, which would have been the Barracuda and Cuda and the Challenger. But they also knew that they needed something that was sportier in their small car line, and that was the Valiant. Valiants at the time were extremely boxy and boring and old lady stuff, and they wanted something spiffier. They probably knew that the Ford Maverick was coming. They already knew what the Nova looked like in 1968. They were little two-doors that had sort of a fastback look. So they wanted to take the boxy Valiant and turn it into a fastback. And they were focused on the E-body, so they just sort of ignored some guys and shoved them in the corner and said, make something cool out of this. And they did, and it turned into the Plymouth Duster, which is a Valiant front clip, and the rest of it, and maybe the door skins, and the rest of it is all different. And it turns out there are a lot of body lines and facets in a Duster. Steve Dulcich learned that when he was painting my crop Duster for me. But the big obstacle to creating this car was making the side windows work, because they have a lot of angle in them rolling from the door up into the top. And that was the main thing that they needed to overcome, and they did, and they created the Duster that had a much longer life than the E-body, and it was a huge hit for Plymouth. So much so that it turned into the Dodge Demon in 1971, which then changed to the Dart Sport in 1973. One other thing about the Duster is that they wanted to call it the Tasmanian Devil. Think of the little Duster logo with a spinning dirt cloud. They had the success with the Plymouth Roadrunner at Warner Brothers with the Warner Brothers tie-in, and so they wanted to do it again with this car, but apparently Warner Brothers wanted way too much money, having seen what happened with the Roadrunner, and so Chrysler told them no, and they came up with their own little cartoon and called it the Duster. And that's the story. Now I've arrived in Maricopa, California, and I'm looking for a piece of hot rodding history. Private property, no trespassing. Okay. This is it, dead end. Also private property, no trespassing. But let me show you what it's all about. Behind the fence here is the site of the original Maricopa Airport, or Kern County Airport. There's another one here now, but this is the original, and we know that it existed at least as early as 1927 through World War II. But what's important about it for hot rodding is that it was the site of a drag strip in 1951 and 1952. Kind of an important drag strip, and let me back up to another track to tell you that story. You've probably heard of the drag strip in Bakersfield called Famoso. Well, that was started famously by a car club out of Bakersfield that was called the Smokers, and they had the Fuel and Gas Championship, or the March Meet. It was a big deal. It still is a big deal. Well, before they had that track, in around 1953, they put together a deal to race right here at this airport in 1951 and 1952. It's pretty obvious that the airport kind of just vanished throughout the 50s, but if you look at the aerial view, and I'll see if I can come up with some photos for you, you can still see a bush line of perhaps sagebrush over here that shows where that runway originally was and where the drag strip originally was. Okay, hot, moving on. I don't know what I'll find next, but I'm gonna hit the road north. Now I'm looking for the cool old stuff in Taft, California. Taft was pretty good. Lots of the cool old signage that I like to look at. I think the best was probably the Union Hall with the sign out front with the oil well on it. That was cool. Now I've got to cannonball just a little bit. I'm going to go through towns like McKittrick and Buttonwillow and Shafter on my way to my final destination that I think you're going to like. Well, the sightseeing is over. It's time for some Red Duster road test information. You know, this thing is a good beater that I just keep chipping away at to make it better and better. And everything I did on this episode worked. The gauges, arguably TMI. I was much happier not knowing when it was too hot, but it's actually fine. It runs at 185 most of the time. The voltmeter is telling me absolutely nothing, so that was garbage. But the rear shocks and the bashing of the rear fender lips and inner wheel wells, that paid off big. When I first put the shocks in, I had them click to 5 and they were too soft, but even then the tires did not rub. I ended up clicking them up to 8 and it doesn't bottom out and it rides better. I will tell you this, the QA1 catalog listing for an A-body Mopar like this one shows a shock that's just a little bit too long and it will bottom out on a car this low. So you might want to have a look at that spec if you're buying stuff for your car. Other than that, no complaints. They've been fantastic. And I also made the Duster look better, I think. It's honestly just a really good driver at this point. But now that my adventure comes to a close, I got one more thing for you. We are going to visit Steve Dulcich.
So it got you here.
Oh, how could it not? We built this thing with precision.
Well, that was the thing. You know, when we wrenched on a car, it wasn't like fake. It would actually be a roadworthy machine. Not to steal the roadworthy title from
Derek.
Yeah.
You know what we did actually, and obviously if you're watching, you know that Steve and I used to be the host of Roadkill Garage. We built a lot of cars here, but I have to admit, when it was a company car, we maybe took the level down just a little bit.
We went down a notch.
We did.
You probably know that from the Pontiac T37
yes,
that you now own.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, we definitely cut some corners if they didn't belong to us, but when these cars belong to us, we actually put some effort in, and obviously they're beaters, but we did it to our standard of mechanical stuff.
Well, I think our greatest one ever was the Vanishing Pain Challenger.
Yeah.
Like literally put the wrenches down, hopped in, and drove to
Nebraska. Yep. Now we had a lot of wins like that. Look at the F-Rod.
Oh, yeah.
First time out it went 880, second time out it went 850.
Yeah.
We had a lot of wins on the show.
Crusher Camaro.
Yeah.
Crop Duster.
Yeah, Crusher Impala. Remember we rebuilt that motor and that thing?
Yeah.
Yeah, we did a lot of good stuff actually.
Yeah, and we still are. You're doing good stuff. I've been watching your channel. Actually,
thanks.
I don't watch much YouTube, but the Freiburger ones are super entertaining for me.
Why would you want to watch this after like 30 years of
I
dealing
don't know.
with me?
I'm still trying to figure it out.
You know
I should
what,
hate
though?
you by now.
I love the Steve Dulcich channel. You need to check that out, especially the ones with you and Emily. I love the Steve and Emily show.
I like doing those. It's super fun. Emily picks stuff up like that. So we're working on the Ram Charger for the last 3 days, trashing on it. Then we're going to drive it to San Francisco and then Yosemite after that. But the thing is, she was like, any job, I'd say, do this. Okay, how does that go? Boom, boom, boom. And then leave her to it. It's pretty good. So it's always super fun. Unfortunately, the Ram Charger trip actually never eventuated because one of the Desert Dogs, which I thought looked pretty good, threw the thread off, so
it exploded.
Yeah, but the Enforcer was waiting in the wings, so they're going to drive that.
Cool.
Yeah.
So you can see all of that stuff on the channel that is called simply Steve Dulcich.
Wow.
So check that out, and occasionally I get people who are like, oh, you're not really friends with those guys. It's like, Steve and I have been friends for literally 30 years.
Yeah.
And I'll take every opportunity to come up here and hang out when I can.
Thanks.
And the Red Duster afforded me that opportunity and made it all the way here, although it might not make it all the way home, but that won't be your problem.
No, I'll probably have to rescue James and Emily and the Enforcer.
Yeah. Okay, are you ready for next time on the David Freiburger channel?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay. More cars, more beaters, more wrenching, more adventures, more fun. Next time on
the David Freiburger channel.
Not bad.
Ah, I like that. It's like we've done it before.
Exactly.
Pretty good.
I need water and beer.
Me too.